So last time we left off, Takopi was impersonating Marina-chan in order for them to not go to prison for the murder they just committed. Just from the few panels we see, we learn that Marina-chan's home life isn't exactly ideal, with there being a great deal of tension between both her mother and her father. In this chapter, we learn that Azuma has an older brother named Junya, who he seems to have a really strong rivalry and dislike for. Azuma sees his older brother as the perfect person. He gets great grades, everyone seems to like him, he even has a part-time job that he doesn't need to get, which aggravates Azuma to no end because he says he doesn't need it and all it does is make their mom worry. In this chapter, we also see the beginnings of a pattern that emerges with Shizuka asking Azuma for increasingly more dire favors that he can't seem to say no to. In this chapter specifically, Shizuka tells Azuma that he should steal his brother's ring in order to get back at him. At first, Azuma is against the idea, but after Shizuka tells him that he'll definitely be able to do it, he sneaks into his brother's room and finds the ring. And just as he is about to snatch it up, his brother walks into the room, so he jumps out of the window, almost falling to his death until Takopi grabs him in midair and then plummets him to the ground. While he was in the room, we can see Azuma reflecting on the perceived perfection of his brother. Azuma thinks about the times that his mother constantly compared him to his brother, refusing to serve him pancakes because he shouldn't be rewarded since he is unable to catch up to the academic achievement and overall accolades of what his brother has achieved. This constant comparison by his mother has led to a feeling of resentment to well up inside Azuma, making him unable to stand his older brother, even though Junya has never specifically done anything to Azuma to make him dislike him. The chapter ends with Shizuka, Azuma, and Takopi all gathering together again to hang out and spend some time together, but as we might have guessed, this moment of happiness is probably very fleeting. The next portion of the story begins with the gang talking about their plan on summer vacation to go to Tokyo to find Chappie and to get Shizuka reunited with her father. They go over a number of details, thinking about how they can use Takopi's flappy wings to get there, which they discover won't work because Takopi's found out that humans go over the weight limit for the happy wings, so they think about the bullet train and other methods that they can utilize. As the chapter continues, we follow Takopi in the form of Marina, checking in some more on Marina's home life. At home, Marina's father complains about how Marina's mother nags too much and asks Marina if she wants to come live with him over in Tokyo. Takopi, thinking about how Chappie and Shizuka's father live in Tokyo, gladly accepts and says that he wants to go live with Papa. Marina's mother states that Marina has changed over the past few weeks, discussing how Marina seems to be behaving different and how instead of wanting to spend time with her, she seems to want to spend more time with her father, stating that Marina is no longer the good girl that she knew and is asking constantly why Marina is so different. Marina's mother begins yelling and screaming, striking at Marina with the phone until she collapses on the floor. Marina's mother begins to state that she knows that even though this person in front of her looks like Marina, there's no way that it's her precious daughter, and that even though she hasn't been the best mom, she hopes that Marina will return. This moment leaves Takopi in a daze. He looks at pictures from Marina's childhood and thinks about how the people in her life must really miss her and love her and cannot believe what he's done. Takopi states that it is time for him to really think about his actions and that he needs to have another serious conversation with Shizuka and talk with her about telling the truth about everything that has happened. And at the very tail end of this chapter, we can see investigators out in the forest and they appear to have found Marina's body buried within the capsule. In the next chapter, things really begin to heat up as investigators have arrived at the school, stating that they have found Marina's body and begin to state to the children how their classmate has died. Azuma and Shizuka look at each other and Azuma grows steadily more nervous as the day carries on. At the end of the school day, Shizuka, Azuma, and Takopi all meet together, and Takopi expresses his belief that it may be time for them to tell the truth about everything that has happened. Azuma angrily snarls at Takopi, calling him an ink-brained idiot and telling him that there's no way that they'll be able to tell them the truth of everything that has happened now, saying that they've come too far to do something like that and to think about the consequences if they should. Shizuka talks to the group about their summer plans and reminds Azuma that he promised that they would take the bullet train to Tokyo and that he's not going to go back on his promise, right? Hearing Shizuka state this, Azuma reaffirms his resolve and heads home, thinking of a plan that can get them to Tokyo without getting in trouble from the police. It is also during this time that we see Shizuka being questioned by investigators about everything that has happened. Following Shizuka's investigation, we return to Azuma and see that he is being confronted by his mother for getting a failing grade on one of his recent tests. But to his surprise, he's greeted with a nice big plate of pancakes. He thinks that at this point, maybe his mother realizes that he's under a great deal of stress and he can finally finally open up to someone about everything that's going on. But instead, he gets the opposite. She tells Azuma that getting abysmal scores just to get her attention is way too childish, and that if he has decided to stop trying, then she will as well, and that she doesn't care if he eats pancakes every day. Being understandably heartbroken by everything his mother said, Azuma runs out of the house and into the woods where he meets up with Shizuka. Shizuka expresses her belief in Azuma that he can do anything that he puts his mind to, and that she's confident in his abilities. Azuma, feeling happy that somebody has placed their confidence in him, tells Shizuka that he'll do whatever she needs. Shizuka then greets Azuma with a smile, thanks him, and says if that's the case, would he mind taking this camera and turning himself into the police for her? I was so upset when I got to this part. This whole time I've been rooting for my girl Shizuka, and now she's out here playing mind games with this kid and telling him to turn himself in. Okay, let's keep moving. Let's keep going. Now, this next section is a heart-wrencher. This chapter focuses on Azuma again, going into his internal state as he really mulls over the proposition from Shizuka about turning himself into the police so that the suspicion is off of her and she can go to Tokyo without any interference. Now, as a reader, we may be thinking, what kind of crazy person would be willing to take the fall for her in this situation, knowing her as little as he has for as long as he has? But now we are given an insight into the traumatic history that Azuma has undergone with his mother, and how the inferiority complex that he has regarding his brother has really left him in a state where he feels like no one depends on him, he can't do anything right, and that this may be his only chance to help out somebody and prove that his existence in the world is worth something. From the flashbacks, we learn that from his childhood, Azuma has been constantly pinned against his brother in some sort of sick sibling rivalry and competition. No matter how good of grades he got, no matter how many other kids seemed to like him, no matter how many accolades he received from other teachers and students, Azuma never seemed to be able to measure up in the eyes of his mother, and she was sure to let him know that. All the while, Azuma's older brother, Junior, seemed to be able to do no wrong. He kept getting the best grades, everyone seemed to like him, and even when he decided to take on a part-time job, Azuma thought that this may be his chance to shine and finally outdo his brother, but it only led to his brother being seen as more relatable, him getting an even stronger social life while maintaining his grades, leaving Azuma even further in the dust. Azuma thinks about how he'll never get the chance to carry on his mother's legacy at their clinic, and how this honor is undoubtedly going to go to Junior, and how this really leaves nothing for him. Azuma feels like the only thing that he has left to prove his existence and worthwhileness in this life is to do something for Shizuka, a girl he feels like looks like his mother, and help her out of the helpless situation that she seems to be in. He deeply wants somebody to want and need him, and he feels like this moment to turn himself into the police is going to be his only chance to do something like that and leave his mark on this world. And with the happy camera in hand, we see Azuma getting ready to leave his house when he is confronted by his brother at the door. Azuma's guilty conscience is getting the better of him, and he has visions of his brother going off on him, accusing him of the murder and telling him that he is worthless and has ruined his future. But when we cut to reality, Junior is looking at his brother empathetically, stating that he knows Azuma has been under pressure lately and that he is here to talk to him and he wants to know what's going on. Azuma opens up to his brother Junior for the first time and tells him how he really feels, stating that his life is worthless and that nobody cares what happens to him. Before Azuma can finish, Junior cuts him off, telling him that this is completely not true, that he is his older brother, he does care about him deeply, and if that he has something on his chest, he wants him to tell him. This sincere revelation brings Azuma to tears, and he begins to open up to Junior, stating that he has something to tell him. After this, we cut to individuals talking about rumors going around about how Azuma was influenced by Shizuka-chan for the murder of Marina. The panel following this shows us that Shizuka is no longer at home, and she has found her way over to Tokyo, where she is planning to find Chappie and confront her father. Now, if you didn't hate deadbeat dads before, this chapter is going to make sure that you do. Shizuka excitedly rings the doorbell, and a man comes out to greet her. Shizuka excitedly greets her father, but something seems off. Shizuka notices that her father is holding another baby in his arms, and there's a whole lot of noise coming from the house. Suddenly, another girl emerges from the doorway, calling the man father as well, and asking who's this person that's at the door calling her father. The man looks down intently, looks Shizuka dead in the eye, and says he's not sure. This moment completely breaks Shizuka. As time has passed, it appears her father has completely started a new life over in Tokyo with a whole new family and has been such a non-factor in Shizuka's own life that he can't even recognize his own daughter anymore. Shizuka walks away completely crestfallen and begins conversating with Takopi. When they find a point to stop, Shizuka states that she believes those children have eaten Chappie and that she needs a happy gadget that allow her to open them up. Understandably, Takopi is pretty frozen and shocked by this and tells Shizuka that it's time to stop. Takopi pleads with Shizuka, telling her that they need to go back home, that she's no longer the girl that he knew, and that he just wants things to go back to normal and for her to be okay. Shizuka vacantly stares at Takopi, and when she finally opens her mouth, she states that it appears Takopi has turned on her as well, and that she truly has nobody left in this world that cares about her. Then, as Takopi turns his head, we can see Shizuka raising a brick and smashes Takopi on the top of the head. We can hear Takopi speak, stating that he remembers something, and it appears the memories that he had lost for so long are starting to come back to him. The next scene cuts to Takopi. The scene then transitions, and we find Takopi in a dump similar to where Shizuka first found him. But instead of Shizuka, it is another girl, a girl that introduces herself as Marina Kirarazaka. And I will not lie to you, homies, I was so confused the first time I read this part that I had to rewind it and read it multiple times, but I think I finally got my head wrapped around it. So in this chapter, we are introduced to a high school age Marina-chan. She has a scar on her face, and we learn that this occurred in an incident where her drunken mother took a shard of glass and assaulted her, leaving her forever marked by this moment. We learn that in this timeline, Marina is actually the one that found Takopi, not Shizuka. And we learn a great deal more about Marina's backstory, about how her father divorced her mother, and following this divorce, Marina's mother was drunken and abusive, and she had to put up with a great deal of pain and suffering as a young lady growing up. Despite all this, Marina remained resilient and she continued living her life. And we learned that Marina's primary dream is to be able to have kids of her own and be a good mother and raise a family that doesn't have this dysfunction and abuse, as she doesn't want her children to have to put up with the same treatment that she endured as a young girl. We also learned that in this timeline, Marina is in a relationship with Ozma. With the help of Takopi, the two reconnected with one another after not having seen each other since grade school. They started dating, and when Marina tells her mother about this is the first time in a long time that they had a healthy conversation, and her mother actually appeared happy. Marina reflects on the difficulties she has had in her life up to this point, but thanks Takopi, and tells him that because of him, her life actually hasn't been too bad lately. Then in the final scene, we hear a conversation about a new transfer student coming in. The girl is described as beautiful, but having come from a tough life, stating that she attempted suicide in her grade school years. As Marina and Ozma are walking, Ozma looks backwards as though he has seen someone he recognized, and then when he turns around, it's a face we also recognize. It appears to be a high school age Shizuka. Oh, the plot is thickening. This is killing me. This chapter is a significant one, and we're starting to reach the climax of our story, gang. So after seeing Shizuka, Ozma sits Marina down and states that he has memories from being a fourth grader, and he realized that Shizuka is the girl that he promised to protect, and that he can no longer be with Marina because Shizuka is actually the one that he loves. Ozma then goes off to find Shizuka while Marina goes home despondent. Marina's mother excitedly asks Marina when she's going to get introduced to Ozma, but as we know now, this isn't going to happen. In the following scenes, we see a side-by-side of the different situations that both Marina and Shizuka are going through. Shizuka excitedly talking to Ozma and the two of them reconnecting, while Marina is once again being assaulted by her mother due to the unfortunate circumstances of her relationship. But the situation goes from bad to worse as the panel continues, and we see Marina hovering over a body, the body of her mother. It is badly bruised and bloodied, and it appears that in the ensuing conflict, Marina killed her own mother. Marina, in the midst of her despair, states that she wishes she would have killed Shizuka when she had the chance while they were in grade school, and that if Shizuka wasn't around, everything in her life would be okay. Seeing the pain that his best friend is in, and no longer wanting her to feel this way, Takopi states that he just has to kill Shizuka and everything will be alright for Marina's life, right? So he makes his way to the Happy Planet to find the Happy Clock so he can turn back time and kill Shizuka, so Marina never has to undergo the sadness that she was experiencing right now ever again. In the panel right before we see the Happy Planet, Marina, holding the glass to her neck, states that she wished she would have given the alien a name, something like maybe Takopi or something. And before we can view how things end for Marina, we see Takopi arriving at the Happy Planet, talking to his happy mother about using the clock and the fact that he needs to go back in time and kill someone. The happy mother expresses to Takopi that this is against the rules and she cannot allow this to happen, so she is forced to erase all of his memories and revert him back to the happy state that he was born into. So So now we finally have the origins as to why Takopii lost his memories. Happy Mother reprimands Takopii, stating that he broke Happy Plan's most important law and that he will not be allowed to return ever again. Taking the lessons he learned from the Earthlings, begins to put hands on the Happy Mother, tells her that he doesn't understand anything and that he has to go back in order to make things right. Happy Mama sits in disbelief, wondering what is killing, thinking about and wondering why Takopii touched her so strongly. Happy Mother is left alone, wishing that Takopii would just talk to her properly. We then cut back to the present with 4th grade Shizuka and Marina, but this time something is different. Takopii remembers his mission. He has vowed to kill Shizuka no matter what it takes. But to Takopi's dismay, he begins having these memories flashing in front of him, and he begins to have doubt. He wonders how he can kill somebody who's so nice to him, and then suddenly, Azuma appears in front of him. Now, I'm not gonna lie to y'all, these next few chapters just about had me in tears. So, in this chapter, Azuma and Takopii have a heart-to-heart. While Azuma doesn't understand most of what Takopii is saying, it just doesn't make sense to him. Takopii expresses how he doesn't understand how Shizuka can be both good and bad. He reflects on all the things that she's done bad to Marina, but he also thinks about all the times that she was nice to him and the bread that she gave him and all the fun that they had playing together, and he's just so confused in his mind how these things can coexist. Azuma calls Takopii an ink-brained idiot and tells him that people are complicated, that people are both good and bad. Azuma states that he's only allowed out for a brief time, but he came because he wanted to tell Takopii thank you for everything. He tells Takopii that he's an ink-brained idiot, but he's a nice ink-brained idiot. He's kind, and all the times that they had playing together and doing fun things and all the advice that they got from one another truly meant something to him, and that he's thankful having known him. Azuma tells Takopii that this is likely the last time the two will see each other, but before he leaves, tells Takopii that since he has the ability to go through other timelines, if he ever runs into Azuma again, tell him to fight with his brother, and then runs off. Now, I won't get into too much depth because this is something I want to do an analysis video on, but I just think that's great, because at first this can be confusing, right? Where you're just like, why would he tell Takopii to give him the advice to fight with his brother? But when you realize that it has to do with the ability to be honest, to open up about your emotions, and to express yourself to somebody in a sincere way, you realize how powerful of a piece of advice that is, right? Because in the past, Azuma basically held all of his feelings in. He was internalizing everything. He had all this resentment built up, and his brother and even his mom didn't even really know how he was feeling. But by having the courage to actually speak out, to fight and argue, you're showcasing your emotions, you're showcasing how you actually feel, and from there, change can happen, right? So I thought that was a beautiful section of this. One of the key points in this chapter is how Azuma realizes he was a fool to try to fix everything for Shizuka when he doesn't even have his own life together. He's too young, too naive, and the situation was too complicated for him to say that he could be somebody else's savior. And this piece of advice gets internalized within Takopii as well. Takopii realizes that the mistake he made was utilizing his gadgets to fix everything. He realizes that being a savior isn't enough and that it takes something more to really help out someone. Even though he's nervous, Takopii stands up to Shizuka. Takopii pleads once again with Shizuka to stop what she's doing, but Shizuka will have none of it. She's too hurt at this point to really hear what Takopii has to say. Shizuka steps on Takopii and rips away at him with her words, calling him useless and asking him what could he do when her father looked at her like he had never seen her before. Shizuka asked Takopii what good is he? What did he do when her mom abandoned her? What did he do when all those kids at school bullied her and looked down on her? What did he do when she was being insulted and nobody was there to help her? Shizuka throws all of her life's pain and internal struggles that she has been dealing with up until this point in time and thrusts it upon Takopii. And ultimately, Takopii tells Shizuka, I don't know. The sincerity at which Takopii says this with takes Shizuka completely off guard. She almost can't believe he actually had the nerve to say it. She yells at Takopii at first and shakes him, but something beautiful begins to happen after this and she starts to cry. We can see her anger and her resentment turn to pain. We can see that hurt turn to grief at all the things that she has been through, all the unfairness of life that she has to endure, especially as a girl at her age, and we can tell the toll that this has taken on her. And this is when we discover that Takopii has truly figured out what it means to be a friend to someone. It's not attempting to fix their problems for them, it's truly understanding and listening. While Shizuka may have said she wanted somebody to come and swoop in and fix every single problem for her, what she really wanted was somebody to be there. She wanted somebody to get all this out to, somebody that would really listen, somebody that would sit down, hear her pain, and empathize with with it. And I won't go into too much detail because, again, I want to make a video regarding this series. But in the face of all the grief and the hurt that Takopii came across, he met it with a smile and told them that whatever happened, things would be okay. And while his sentiment was not meant to be malicious or harmful, when you interact with someone in this way, it can feel dismissive. It can feel as though you really don't care what their struggle is, and it makes them feel as though they're not being heard. Perhaps the greatest skill Takopii learned in his time on Earth is the skill of true communication, to truly listen to what somebody has to say and not be focused on making them distracted from it or making them feel better, but really sitting down and taking the time to hear what is going on in this person's life and being that shoulder that they need through life's unfairness and life's difficulties. We see Shizuka and Takopii together as Shizuka sobs, presumably talking through all of her problems and thinking about everything that she's going through up until this point, and eventually she falls asleep. When she wakes up, Takopii is there to greet her with a smile, stating that he thanks her for playing with him and for being nice to him. Takopii thanks Shizuka for the bread that she gave him and tells her that there's one last thing that he can do. With all the willpower and strength that he has left, Takopii reveals the happy camera that he was given by Azuma back when they were having their talk, and in a burst of energy explodes, and in the next scene we see Shizuka alone, sitting in the spot where she and Takopii once sat together, and it appears she has no memory of what's going on or what she was even saying. This chapter gets me so emotional, man. We have entered the final chapter of Takopii no Genzai. And in this chapter, the events that we see appear a lot like the events that we saw at the very beginning of the book, with Marina relentlessly bullying Shizuka, Azuma dealing with the problems from his mother. But one of the first changes we see is that in the classroom, Azuma speaks about actually getting to an argument with his brother. The other kids in the school didn't even know he had one. When Azuma offhandedly mentions that he has a PS4 like a real king, the other students speak about their envy and ask if they can play with him sometime, giving us a hint that Azuma in this timeline has learned to open up about his emotions and has the opportunity to grow into someone with a healthy social life that can hopefully help him be resilient against the problems that he's dealing with at home. In the next few panels, we are greeted with images of Marina and Shizuka out in the woods. Shizuka is being brutally attacked, as we saw in the first few chapters, when all of a sudden on her pencil board, something falls out, and it appears to be an image of a cartoon octopus. Marina sees this, she calls it stupid, and insults Shizuka at first, but then you can tell something inside of her changes. For some reason, she has a weird sense of nostalgia when she sees this image, and she begins talking about how it looks like something that probably talks too much, but also somebody that always has your back, somebody that's always going to be there to support you. Shizuka says the same, and that she gets the exact same feeling from this image when she looks at it too. Then, seemingly out of nowhere, both girls begin to cry as they relate to one another on the basis of this image and grow emotional, although neither one of them can seem to pinpoint exactly why they have such strong feelings associated with this octopus. And in the following pages, we get left with a message from Takopii. Takopii discusses how there's so many things that he can't do for us, the reader, so many things that he can't do for our families, how he knows that there are already so many families that have already drifted apart, kids who have moms who won't look at them anymore, and fathers who aren't just theirs anymore. Takopii tells us that despite these hardships, he knows that we'll grow up just fine. Takopii reflects on the most important thing that he learned on his time on Earth, that talking is the most important thing that we can do with one another. Holding in one's feelings and internalizing all of the hatred due to the unfairness of the world only serves to kill us from the inside. But when we share with others, even if it's things that are seemingly stupid or arbitrary, we get something out and we form connections. And it's these connections that give us the willpower to make it through life's toughest moments. And in the final pages of the manga, we see an older Shizuka and Marina, with Marina complaining about her mom being tilted, and Shizuka jokingly saying that her mom's always tilted. Marina comes back with, well, it's a better than your life, and we see through their mutual connection with Takopii that the two have formed a friendship that have lasted to their high school years. And while we see the scar on Marina's face still, indicating that her home life is still very much far from perfect, the fact that she is still here and the fact that the two of them have one another gives us hope that the events of this timeline do not have to end as tragically as the ones previously. And it is on this note of hope that we end Takopii no Genzai. This story is a masterpiece, guys. I'm over here crying in the club. You can judge me if you want, but this story is just too good. There is so much to talk about, but we'll get into that in the analysis video, right? Like, that can wait. Let's just kind of appreciate this thing for the amazing story that it is. I appreciate all of you for coming on this ride with me. Be good to each other, talk to people, don't keep that shit in, and I will see you guys in the next video.